Hey, 8th grade. Today we're going to start with a warm-up. There are 6 problems. They're all squares. Remember back in chapter 8, there were 3 different ways that we could solve these. We could use distributive property, we could use FOIL, and we could use the box method. So take a minute and try those 6. When you're finished, come back. Here are our answers. I tried to do them each of a couple of ways so that you could, in case you forgot, be reminded. Looks like my camera's a little zoomed in. So for one, I used FOIL, where we did the first in parentheses, the outside, the inside, and then the last. And we ended up with x squared plus 6x plus 9. For number 2, I used distributive, so y times y, then y times negative 10, then negative 10 times y, then negative 10 times negative 10. And then for number 3, I used the box method, so m plus 4 on the top and m plus 4 going down. And we ended up with m squared plus 8m plus 16. I boxed the answers for 4, 5, and 6. So if you could check those. Look for any errors. Today we're moving on to 9-4, which is solving quadratic functions by completing the square. Okay? We're going to find the value of c for our first skill that completes the square. Once we find what c is, then we will factor the trinomial. Before we get started, I do want to point out from our warm-up, if we're to look at the trinomial, so again, this is a trinomial, right? It's got the 3 terms. Here's the first example that we're going to do. That looks like the answers we got from our warm-up. Those are all trinomials. And since we're factoring, we are going to be finding parentheses that we started with. Okay? So I want to point out, if we focus on looking at this middle term in the relationship to what is in the parentheses, you'll notice that 3 is half of 6. If I look at the next one, 20, negative 20 is my middle number, and negative 10 is half of 20. For number 3, 8, and 4 is half of 8. For number 4, we got negative 30. Oh, this is because there were numbers in the front. Okay, coefficient, doesn't work when there's a coefficient. Skip that one. And today we're only going to be working when there's the variables all by itself. For number 6, we have 2, negative 2 in the middle, and there was 1 to begin with. Okay? So today we're going to be using that in our lesson. Okay, so for our first example, we have x squared minus 24x plus c. We're trying to find the c, and we're going to use the middle as a clue, okay? Because it's a square, right? Because it's a square, just like the warm-ups that we did. Those were all squares, okay? So if we take 24, negative 24, and we divide it by 2, because it's our middle number, we end up with negative 12. So negative 12 is our parenthesis answer. Okay, it's what makes our binomials. And to find c, we need to multiply our last. So negative 12 squared, which is 144. So c is 144, and our factored answer is x minus 12 squared. Let's do another one. let's say we have x squared plus 38x plus c. So if I take 38, my middle term, and I divide it by 2, I get 19. So x plus, both my signs are positive, so plus 19, x plus 19. So then I find 19 squared using a calculator. Is 361. So C is equal to 361, and our factored answer is x plus 19 squared. You try one. Let's say you have x squared minus 26x plus c. Careful with your signs. Notice that you've got a negative here and a positive here. Negative 26 divided by 2 is negative 13. So that means I'm going to have x minus 13, x minus 13, and 13, negative 13 squared is equal to 169. So C equals 169, and you should have got x minus 13 squared as your factored answer. Okay. Skill number 2. Sorry, I'm going to try and reposition this without dropping it. Okay. Solve the equation by completing the square. This time we're going to have equations, okay? So it's different from the first one. This one's going to have equals something. We still want to remember that to get the coefficient, we're going to divide by 2, and then we square the result. So think of the warm-up, okay? And what we just did from the first few examples. We're going to walk through an example, and I started a list of steps. I feel like that's going to be easier to help keep track. So here we go. We want to focus for these problems on the x squared and the bx, okay? So if I'm focusing on that for this first example, then I'm focusing on the a squared plus 2a. Because there's something else there, I'm just going to move it. So the first thing I'm going to do is move it over. So I have plus 3 on this side, and then I add it to this side. So now my new problem is a squared plus 2a equals 3. Okay? So now I can focus on this middle term, right? It goes a squared plus 2a, and then it continues on. This is the middle, and this is the one that we cut in half. So 2 divided by 2 gives me 1. And then to find out c, I square the answer I get. Okay, so I'm going to do 1 squared, which is equal to 1. So c in this problem is a plus 1. And because it's an equation, I've now changed it. I added something that wasn't there, so I have to remember that twin rule, and whatever I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I have to add a 1 on this side. okay? And remember, this first, when I cut it in half, this number becomes the number in my parentheses. So I would have had a plus 1 and a plus 1 as my square. And now that's this side factored. And on the right side, I have a 4. And both of these are squares, right? There's 2 of these and 2 of these. So if I wrote that simplified, I would have a plus 1 and then 4, not 2 of these, but it's a square, right? The number 4 is a square. So I can square root both sides. And when I do, I'm left with a plus 1 equals positive or negative 2. Because negative 2 times negative 2 is a positive 4. Positive 2 times positive 2 is a positive 4. And then here's where we break it into case 1 and case 2. And so we'll do a plus 1 equals positive 2 and a plus 1 equals negative 2. And solve for these as normal. And we end up with a is equal to 1. A is equal to negative 3. So our final answer looks like this. Okay, let's write some notes to help us remember what we did. We are going to do some more examples, but it is a little bit confusing where the numbers come from. So the first thing we did here, right, after this step, was we found the half of B. We took 2 and divided it by 2. Then we square it. So that was this, right? If we were maybe to number these. This was number 1. This is number 2. This is number 3. Then we take those numbers and we use them, right? We put 1 in the parentheses and we put 1 back in the problem. And that's the one that's important. So for 4, we're going to add the result of the third step of 3 of step to your x squared plus bx side. For number 5, we need to remember the twin rule. Then we need to solve the square, right? We need to do the square root. It's 7. Case 1, case 2. There's a lot of steps. I'm going to give you guys a second to write that down. We're going to use that list to help us try another one. Pause it if you need to. I'm going to keep my list handy. And I'm going to do our next example near it. Okay, here we go. This time we have k squared plus 8k plus 12 equals 0. So we want to focus on the first two terms. So I want to focus on the first two terms. So to do that, I have to move over anything else. Okay, so I'm going to do minus 12 minus 12. So I have k squared plus 8k equals negative 12. The next step I need to find, we need to find half of b. So b is 8. So I need to take 8 and divide it by 2, and I get 4. Okay, so 4 is what's going to go in the parentheses. That's the square for this problem. So I have k plus 4, k plus 4. Now I square it. So I square what I found, the answer to number 2. So 4 squared is 16. Add the result of 3, so 16, add it to the x squared plus bx side. So plus 16. Then step 5, remember the twin rule. So if I do it to this side, then I have to do it to this side. So this k squared plus 8k plus 16 factored is k plus 4 times k plus 4. This side is still balanced. These two things are the same, right? This is multiplied. When this is multiplied out, we get this answer, and when this is factored down, we get this answer. So now we have to factor out what's on this side. We have to combine them. So we have negative 12 and a positive 16, and that leaves us with 4. So if I condense this, I have k plus 4 squared, and I have 4 again, which is a square. So I'm going to square root both sides, and that leaves me with k plus 4 equals plus or minus 2, just like last time. And now I'm going to solve for case 1 and case 2. K plus 4 equals 2. K plus 4 equals negative 2. So our answer when we finish is that k is equal to negative 2 and negative 6. I feel like you should try one. Okay, you've seen 2. You have notes. Why don't you try one? Here's yours. A squared minus 2a minus 8. If you go through your steps, you should end up solving for a and getting that a is equal to 4 and negative 2. For homework today, I'm going to add a worksheet. And from the worksheet, I think I'll circle the ones, but I'm going to have you try 6, 8, 9, 10, 12, 13, and 14. 7 problems like this, okay? If you haven't checked in with me, boys, I'm talking about you. I haven't seen any boys. You need to pop on. Okay, I'll be online for Google Hangout on Thursday. I think planned for 8th grade around 2:15. Just say hi. Let me know how math is going. It doesn't have to be long, 2 minutes. Okay? And ladies, I haven't seen all of you, but I have seen a lot. So if you haven't checked in, I am keeping track. So I want to see you all this week. Thanks, guys. Good luck.